Hello, and glad you can join us. Here's what's happening. Iran's revenge on America, the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, targeted. Explosions rock Qatar with missiles shot out of the sky.
Canada looks first to the European Union to build a better world.
The Prime Minister's European outreach.
During this time, it would be less appropriate to go somewhere hot than somewhere cold.
Plus, millions try to stay cool under a sizzling heat dome.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
A tit-for-tat response by Iran to America's weekend attack on Tehran's nuclear installations. The U.S. was expecting it, the scope unknown until today, when Iranian missiles were fired towards a U.S. target in Qatar and were knocked out of the sky. Now, this video of Iran's attack today, sent to CTV National News, shows some of the effects on the ground in Qatar. Iran, in a statement, claiming they lobbed the same number of missiles as U.S. bombs dropped on Saturday. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is with us. Okay, Joy, this is being called a symbolic retaliation by Iran. Take us through what happened and tell us more.
Sandy, Iran's response, it looks very limited, and it's very similar to what happened before when President Trump, in his first term, called for the assassination of Iran's military general Soleimani. Iran retaliated, and back then about 100 U.S. soldiers were injured. Now, this time around, everyone but essential personnel were removed from that air base in Qatar, and there were no reports of injuries. Also, Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social that Washington was warned, as well as Qatar, that this would happen. They fired about 14 missiles. Here's this report, Sandy. Explosions boomed over the night sky, terrifying images of missiles seen over Doha and posted on social media. Iranian state TV said it fired missiles at the Al Udeid U.S. military base that President Donald Trump visited just 1 month ago. Qatar says its air defenses managed to intercept Iranian missiles, and no casualties have been reported. The attack was announced on Iran state TV Proportionate. Iran said to the attack by the U.S. it was bomb for bomb. This was retaliation, Iran says, for the U.S. bombing Saturday. Satellite imagery shows the damage to 3 nuclear facilities targeted by the U.S. President Donald Trump warned Iran this was a one-off and not to strike back, or else.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Iran reportedly gave Qatar advance notice of the attacks, temporarily closing its airspace, U.S. military bases, and major U.S. cities on high alert. The president meeting with his national security team and the Trump administration stressing,
we're not at war with Iran, we're at war with Iran's nuclear program.
But it comes as the president, sure to anger Iran, floated the idea of regime change.
Of course, Iran would like to escalate in response to the Israeli and the American attacks, but we will see exactly whether Iran is actually able to effectively respond.
It's pretty clear, Sandy, that this president wants to de-escalate. He posted on Truth Social, congratulations, world. It is now time for peace. Sandy?
Okay, Joy, thank you so much. CTV's Joy Malbon in Washington. Now, Canada this morning cautioned citizens in Qatar to maintain a high degree of caution after the U.S. issued a shelter in place to its nationals and diplomats. And Global Affairs later in the day helped a group of Canadians leave Israel as that country and Iran continue to fire missiles at each other and sirens sounding in both Tehran and Tel Aviv. CTV's senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture is with us now. Okay, Mike, what details did Global Affairs offer of that mission?
Sandy, government officials say any Canadian who has requested to get out of Israel and the West Bank have been able to do so. However, with no diplomatic presence in Iran, things are more complicated there. The Canadian government has been able to have 4 buses stationed at the border crossing between Iran and Turkey, and according to officials, just 10 Canadians have made use of that service yesterday. Now, this morning, 55 Canadians took advantage of the buses that the government arranged to take people from Tel Aviv to Jordan, while there were 7 Canadians who got out of the West Bank in a similar way. Now, in all cases, these people are being brought to locations where the Canadian government is facilitating access to commercial travel options. According to Global Affairs Canada, there are 6,000 Canadians registered in Israel, 5,500 in Iran, and 400 in the West Bank. In the past 10 days, hundreds of Canadians have left those areas, and the government says it's ready to help more. Government officials did say they have the capacity to facilitate travel out of the region, and they encouraged Canadians to take advantage of these options. However, with no sign of de-escalation, it's unclear how long those options for departure will be in place. Sandy?
All right, Mike, thank you. Now, the Prime Minister says he spoke with the U.S. President overnight about de-escalating the conflict in the Middle East. Mark Carney and top cabinet ministers are now watching developments from Brussels as they attend a Canada-EU summit to conduct other business as well. CTV's Jeremy Sharon is traveling with the Prime Minister.
A morning visit to a military cemetery kick-started Prime Minister Mark Carney's first full day in Belgium. A ceremony to honor hundreds of fallen Canadian soldiers buried here after the First and Second World War. Ahead of this Canada-EU summit, a meeting between Carney and European leaders focused on joint security and defense.
Very, very warm welcome to this EU-Canada summit.
We look forward to moving to an ever closer partnership with the European Union.
Here, Carney signed a new security and defense pact with European Union leaders aimed at diversifying its trade and defense industrial partnerships, billed as a first step towards more defense procurement from Europe and an eventual plan to get Canada into the Rearm Europe military program.
It will help us deliver on our new requirements for capabilities more rapidly and more effectively. It will help build our industries, secure our jurisdictions.
But Carney's European trip has been dominated already by the escalating war in the Middle East. The Prime Minister spoke with President Trump overnight and says de-escalation was a focus of their conversation.
Where the state of Iran has been a sponsor of terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and beyond. And where at least in our opinion, Canada has listed the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, active terrorist organization. These are violations of international law.
Carney travels to The Hague in the morning for a highly anticipated NATO meeting where it's expected the conflict in the Middle East will dominate too. NATO's Secretary General was pressed on it today.
That is why NATO has said Iran should not, and this is a consistent position of NATO, Iran should not have its hands on a nuclear weapon. So, and I would not agree that this is against international law what the US did.
The Hague summit will also see the alliance look at a new baseline defense spending target of 5% of GDP. Canada only this month committed to meeting the current 2% target, a decade after the alliance agreed to it. Sandy?
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. Now, the Prime Minister is far away from the heat wave hitting Ottawa and other parts of Ontario and Quebec, with temperatures in some places hitting, well, high into the late 30s. So remember to keep an eye on the elderly and the very young. CTV's Sarah Plowman now in the areas most affected and what you need to know to stay safe. Sarah.
Sandy, here in Fredericton all day, the mercury has been rising as that heat dome that's parked over large parts of Ontario and Quebec inches its way here. Now, people sought relief at splash pads and in the shade. A lot of people welcomed the heat here, though, because the highest it got was about 28 degrees. In much of Ontario and southwestern Quebec, people are sweltering.
We're seeing places like in Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa, we're seeing temperature highs of 35, 36 degrees. In Ottawa, they haven't seen a 36 degrees in over 5 years.
Count the humidex and it's even hotter. In Toronto, about 2,700 customers didn't have power in the middle of the day, including several condos. We're waiting to hear what caused it, but have been told the crews have restored power. It was out for about 3 hours or so. This kind of heat can be dangerous. It's also the first heat wave of the year, and we're not acclimatized to this. Seniors, people with chronic illnesses, children, and those who work outdoors are especially susceptible to heat exhaustion or heat stroke. It's recommended people stay out of the heat, stay hydrated, spend time in a room that's cool. One expert points out that fans are not as effective as we think.
So when you are going to use a fan, avoid using it if your indoor environment is certainly above 33 degrees Celsius, which today it shouldn't be that bad because it might only be a day or two of extreme heat.
And the professor you heard from there highlights that even if you seek relief in a cooler space, a library, a mall, a cooling center, that once you re-enter the heat, expect to see your body temperature rise at a more rapid rate. So be aware of that.
Okay.
Sandy.
Good information, Sarah. Thank you. Let's pick up on the heat and bring in CTV's, your morning meteorologist, Kelsey McEwen, to tell us more about the hot weather, the variations across the country. Kelsey.
The temperature differences across Canada as we kick off this final week of June are pretty extraordinary. So I'll step out of the way so you can take a look. 37 this afternoon in Toronto, 36 for Ottawa, 35 in Montreal. Keep in mind, those are all the air temperature values. You add in the humidity, it is feeling that much more oppressive, feeling into the mid-40s for this afternoon. Now compare that to Edmonton, 14 degrees this afternoon. A reminder, areas of the prairies, as you head westward into the Rockies, saw snow over the weekend. And that had to do with this big upper trough that was amplifying over Western Canada. And as that digs in deeper, it further amplifies the ridge of high pressure that's sitting over the eastern half of North America. Now, when you get into a position where there is high pressure like this time of year, you can get into this kind of cyclical nature where the hot air rises, and then as it descends back down to the surface, it compressionally warms and it gets even hotter than it already is. Now, aided by southwesterly winds at the surface, we're just getting into this kind of never-ending cycle of heat. The good news is it's the atmosphere, and so that never-ending feeling is actually going to end. As we head into Wednesday, we get into more of a zonal flow, meaning more west to east without this amplification, and that helps things to kind of calm down for Wednesday. So it is still going to be hot midweek, but the humidity in particular is going to take a steep dive, which is the relief that we're all going to feel. Now, in terms of the heat, it's south of all this active weather. The same region, just on the northern edge of it, is likely to see severe thunderstorms both in the morning today and then into the afternoon as well. The temperature story is the big thing. You're seeing from the high 30s today dropping into the high 20s as we head towards Wednesday, that humidity dropping as well. And as you see, as we look at the dew points, the dry versus moist air, that drier air from northern communities in both Ontario and Quebec slowly descending its way southward. Now, Atlantic Canada, you're also going to eventually feel the relief Wednesday, particularly for the Maritimes.
All right, Kelsey McEwen. Let's turn our attention now to the fire situation in Manitoba, where there's some good news for residents of Flin Flon, now able to head home for the first time in weeks, and the Premier today provided an update. CTV's Alex Carpa now on what was said and what it means for those with a reprieve. Hi, Alex.
Sandy, the state of emergency, it was lifted here in Manitoba almost 4 weeks after it was put in place. But Premier Wab Kinew says crews remain vigilant.
We're still providing these services, but we're able to deliver them using the normal channels of government. And so as we move forward in our great Manitoba summer, we want everyone to be safe.
Thousands have now been given the green light to go home. Noelle Drimmy was forced to leave Flin Flon at the end of May, but now, after almost a month, she will be returning home later this week. She says she doesn't know what she'll return home to.
What the state of the fridges and freezes are, and because we had power outages and things like that. But what I've heard from other people who have returned, things seem relatively okay. Again, like lawns are out of control, and there's lots of, those types of things, like aesthetic things.
While Drimmy is fortunate to be able to to return to her home. Others haven't been so lucky. Cindy Pedwell lost her home in Udeid Air Base, Saskatchewan, just southwest of Flin Flon. She has a business in Flin Flon, but says she won't be returning for a few days.
It took over 3 times as long to get where we were going. And, going back home to that, I don't really want to sit in something like that. So I'll let everybody else race back and, get back to the things that they have. And then we'll come back on the weekend.
As Flin Flon evacuees slowly migrate back to the community, the mayor cautions that some services may not be readily available and is urging those returning back to the city to bring about 2 weeks worth of food. Sandy?
Alex Carpa. Today marks the 40th anniversary of Canada's worst terror attack, the bombing of an Air India flight killing all 329 people on board. Most of the victims were Canadian.
Canada never really viewed this as a Canadian tragedy. It never really got into the psyche of Canadians, and then our politicians basically ignored it for many years.
Family members are calling for Canada to do more so future generations understand the impact of the tragedy. On June 23, 1985, Air India Flight 182 took off from Montreal en route to Mumbai, India. A bomb planted by 6 separatists exploded just off the coast of Ireland. The bombing remains the largest mass murder in Canadian history. 1/3 of the victims were children. Events are being held across the country today, as well as in India and Ireland, to remember those who perished. Coming up after the break, career advice from a godfather.
AI is just going to replace everybody.
See if you can guess the safest and most secure job. Plus, backhoe bandits hit a Toronto bank. Police in Toronto are investigating an attempt at a brazen break-in at a bank early this morning. Thieves using a rather ingenious method. A backhoe excavator was used to smash the roof of a Scotiabank branch. Police say the suspects weren't able to get in and fled before they arrived, leaving behind the machine and extensive damage to the building. A warning now to millions of workers about the threat of artificial intelligence, and it's coming from Geoffrey Hinton, the Canadian godfather of AI. He says unless limits are placed on the technology's developments, we can expect a spike in job losses and inequality. CTV's John Venivalle-Rao explains.
Indiana gonna win, baby! In an advertising first, this completely AI-generated commercial recently ran on American primetime TV. No one you see is real. Everything created in 2 days using text prompts. Until now, the ad would have required hiring a production crew, and it's an example of the kind of job disruption this Canadian AI pioneer worries about.
I think if you make lots and lots of people unemployed, even if they get universal basic income, they're not going to be happy.
University of Toronto professor Geoffrey Hinton is a Nobel Prize-winning computer scientist.
If I worked in a call center, I'd be terrified.
On a podcast, he said the tech he helped to develop could soon enable one person to do the work of 10, and fears job losses are already beginning to happen.
And I think for mundane intellectual labor, AI is just going to replace everybody.
This all comes as Amazon CEO recently told employees expanded use of AI will reduce its total corporate workforce in the next few years. Already, university graduates are having a tough time landing that first job, and AI adoption likely a contributing factor.
In technical fields like computer science, graduates are having a harder than usual time finding positions.
According to StatsCan, 3 out of 5 Canadian workers are employed in occupations with a high potential for exposure to AI. As for how smart chatbots are, a group gave them an IQ test for humans.
Last year at this time, the top model had an IQ of about 97. This year, it had an IQ of 137.
Hinton was asked what job he'd tell his own kids to get if they needed one.
Trained to be a plumber.
Really?
Yeah.
Something a machine can't do for now. John Venivalle-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead after the break, uproar over wedding plans. Why Venetian locals are objecting to a billionaire's planned nuptials. One of the world's richest men, the founder of Amazon, is getting married again, but not everyone is celebrating.
The problem is not the wedding. The problem is the system. One big billionaire can't rent a city for his pleasure.
Today, Greenpeace joined locals in Venice protesting the lavish destination wedding of Jeff Bezos and journalist Laura Sanchez. The multi-day event later this month will see a number of celebrities descending on the ancient city. Some Venetians are using the wedding to highlight concerns about over-tourism in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And the world's largest ever digital cameras revealing brand new snapshots of the universe. These are the first images from the Venice Rubin Observatory, which is perched on a mountaintop in Chile. The vibrant images of nebulas, stars, and galaxies are all a part of the plan to take a deeper look at the night sky. The observatory hopes to capture 20 billion galaxies, discover new asteroids, and possibly unravel some of the mysteries surrounding dark matter. After the break, simply the best.
And now here's your finals MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
How the Canadian star known as SGA took over the NBA Finals. The Oklahoma City Thunder are riding high as NBA champions for the first time in franchise history, and the team has some Canadian talent to thank for that victory.
For the first time, the NBA champion resides in Oklahoma City.
Hamilton, Ontario's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led OKC to that big win over the Indiana Pacers Sunday night in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. SGA, as he's affectionately known, was named MVP of the Finals. That's on top of being named the regular season MVP and earning the NBA scoring title. A list of accolades he's still coming to terms with.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even wrap my head around. But it just goes to show, like, when you work hard, when you focus on the right things, when you take care of the right things, and you stick with that program for a certain amount of time, you can achieve anything.
Fans have been riveted by the 26-year-old Canadian's dominance of the sport all season. Among them, SGA's former high school coach, who talked to CTV News about the star's formative years and his nonstop hustle.
A wonderful kid, super great family, from very humble beginnings, but has worked his tail off to get everything that he's accomplished here.
Now, SGA wasn't the only Canadian in the finals. He was joined on the Thunder Bay Montreal's Lou Dort, and there were a pair of Canadians on the Pacers, Aurora, Ontario's Andrew Nemhard and Benedict Mathurin, also from Montreal. Well done, men. And as we say goodbye, a recap of today's developments, a reminder that Donald Trump has met with his national security team in the Situation Room in the aftermath of a retaliatory attack by Iran of a U.S. military base in Qatar. Doha saying it was given advance warning and was therefore in a position to shoot the missiles out of the sky, a symbolic assault, officials say. Omar will have any new developments later on CTV National News. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.